thanks for joining. Sorry, we had a little bit of some technical issues there with multiple meetings happening at the same time with the same account. So they'll have to sort that out.
I just sent a text to Mary Ann to see if she's going to join us.
She's not going to join us this evening. She's in another location, I think, without stable internet access, which could be multiple places in Vermont. Okay, here. Let me get my agenda up. Where are we? Okay. All right. All right. Is everyone on? Let's see. I think so, right? Lovely. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for volunteering for this committee. I think Jessica's on. She's going to chat about the work that was done in the ad hoc committee previously. But I think it's sort of continuing that good work. The select board was very impressed with the work that residents had done with regard to the previous work and the proposals put forward. And the idea from that came just to actually establish a committee with a group of people on for 2-year term or 3-year terms that would be able to continue that work and either work on projects that they would then propose to the select board or work on projects that can be sort of standalone. And usually you would bring stuff to the select board that actually the select board needs to, or the town needs to pay for, or we need permission to do things like that. Some of the information in the proposal we are budgeting for this year for some of the recommendations, and others will sort of, I think hopefully this committee will revisit and maybe flesh out in a little bit more detail to be able to propose again. But I think everything that went before us, I think all the select board members were impressed, as was the town administrator, and so I think a lot of that can go ahead. It would just be sort of recognizing funding opportunities and ways to be able to implement it. So looking at our sort of introductory agenda here, let's go to number 2, housekeeping. In that email thread that you folks have seen from me and from Val initially, just send me your contact information. I'm going to put together just a Word doc that has all the members' names and addresses and phone numbers in, just so we can contact people. That's usually very helpful, just in case a particular member steps away and need to get in contact with them, or for reminders or just information, things like that. So just reply to that, and you can just reply to me and then can put it in a single document or reply all, whatever you prefer. But it's nice to be able to have that information. I created a page on the town website that just has your name and eventually your term limits on there. And if you wish contact information to put there, let me know and I can put emails in. I know for select board, I'm usually the chair of a committee, that contact information is there on the website. So members of the public can reach you. But if other members want to put their information up there too, that's fine with me. Just let me know. Item 3, details on the committee structure. With the select board, everything that we do sort of runs as a proposed motion and is voted on. You can, with this particular committee, for the work that you're going to be doing, you can do the same thing if you wish. There's also consensus, and this is all sort of part of Robert's rules in terms of how to run a public meeting and what you need to do. Consensus is usually consensus of the whole group, and different committees work by different ways. Select board and planning usually does motions and voting and has an official record of that. For energy and I think mostly on conservation as well, it's consensus because of the particular projects that you're working on. Generally, you wouldn't need a motion, you can go by consensus. So you can decide how you want to run things. I think given the nature of this committee, consensus is probably going to be fine, but there may be times where you need to make a motion, have a second from one of the committee members, and then you'd all vote. but it'll be your choice. I think you can probably just do consensus, which makes things easier. But you know, as you sort of work through and have these meetings, you can figure out your own way to be able to run the meeting. Item 4. So committee member term limits. Let's go through and see who wants to do what. I know that Marianne, who's not here this evening, she was interested in a 2-year term, so I'm going to put her down for a 2-year. How else, or what terms are people looking at? We usually do 2 and 3s with members, just because if members want to rotate off, it doesn't mean that everyone's leaving at the same time, and there's some overlap, and knowledge can be passed on, things like that. So if you folks want to just think about that quickly and just let me know here in the meeting what you'd be interested in, and I'll just sort of get that information plugged in officially. Let's go through. Jerry, what are you interested in, a 2 or a 3?
I'm pretty open to either one. I'm not
Okay.
too locked into anything one way or the other.
Okay. I'm going to put you down for a 3. Let's see. Let me look at my list here. Herb, what are you interested in? 2. Okay.
Peace out, brother.
He's doing something there. Kevin?
I'll say 2 also. It could lead to 3.
Okay. And you can switch too.
Part
I
of
mean,
why
you can speak with different committee members if you're dying for another year, and you know, when you get to the certain end of your term. But I'm happy to put you down for 2 now.
Well, part of why I'm saying that is being a teacher at Mount Abe, you know, that's my connection too. And I don't see me leaving Mount Abe in the next 2-3 years. As for living in Bristol for 3 more years, that I'm not certain of.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm staying in Bristol that long.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Chris? 3?
3, please.
3. Okay. Sure. What do we got? What are you up to? That's good. Dustin?
I'm good with whatever. You know, I can start at 2 or fill a 3-year if that's what's needed.
Okay. What's
Don't-
Tanya in?
Either
Okay.
one for me as well.
All right. Let's do Dustin is 3 and Tanya is 2. Do I have my math correct there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. All right, super. Thank you very much. We'll put that down. Excellent. Let's see what else we got here. Election of officers. Just to be able to have things organized, we need to vote on and have a chair and a vice chair. Vice chair isn't always necessary, but it's nice if the chair is unable to host a meeting, the vice chair can take on that responsibility. And we also need to have a secretary, and usually that's just someone who's taking the minutes. This meeting's being recorded, so I'll make some notes on this meeting to be able to post. But generally, you need to have minutes from a meeting, a public meeting that need to be posted 2 or 3 days after the meeting takes place. We also have recordings, and Neat will probably be recording these as well. But we do need, definitely need a chair and a secretary to do the minutes. So who would be interested in, is anyone interested in chairing this committee? Anyone have a driving force that they're willing to do? And usually the chair, similar to what I did here, it's sort of working on the agenda and usually the meetings, and you can decide amongst yourselves if you want to have them. My suggestion would be once a month, unless you feel that you need to do twice a month, but usually once a month is enough. And it allows people to sort of work through what's been discussed at the previous meeting, any particular homework that needs to be done. But yeah, chair would be setting the agenda, emailing and contacting the other members and sort of putting things on the agenda, running meetings, things like that. So I don't know if any of you are interested in that position.
I'll stick my hand up.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Chris. Anyone interested in a vice chair position? Again, this is sort of you don't have to have a vice chair, but it's nice if the chair is away, you're able to still run the meeting. And that's something that I guess if you didn't have a vice chair, Chris could ask someone to host the meeting at a particular month if he was unable to, but I don't know if anyone's interested in the vice chair position.
I'll put myself in for that.
Okay.
And
Okay, so Herb for that.
am I not?
Yep. Is that right? Okay. And then just a secretary. Anybody interested in just in doing minutes? And the minutes don't have to be particularly detailed, but it does need to sort of, you need to get a sense of the meeting and what's happened at the meeting. Because these are also recorded, which is an advantage that Bristol has. We have neat, you know, the full recording the meeting is there, which is nice, but it's where you need to have a text record of it as well. So is anybody interested in taking minutes for the meetings?
We can volunteer Mary Ann.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Sure, and I can ask her
That'll
about
teach
that.
her.
Yeah, and I'll make a note who volunteered here as well, so that's good. Okay. All right, I can speak to her about that, and I'll bring up some information and questions she had. And actually, yeah, why don't I do that now, and then we'll get Jessica. You're good for a couple minutes, and then so you can go through the findings and the information from the previous committee. Let me just bring up Mary Ann's information here. And she had a bunch of questions. Let's see if I can find that. Here we go. Yeah, she sent me an email. She was just away and unable to join the meeting. Yeah, she said, please share with the group if you feel these questions are helpful. Understanding there was a committee previous to this one, what were they tasked with? Why did they disband? And what is the difference with the goals of this advisory board? I would say, well, Jessica can probably speak to that, but they weren't initially tasked. It was initially, it was a project that I was working on in a different way for Bristol Core when I was the executive director. I had, because Core is the nonprofit downtown group, we're very focused on the downtown. I'd spent a lot of time on Main Street. I live on Mountain Terrace. I'm very close to a lot of walking in town, and we're always looking at ways to improve the safety of the downtown. So there were certain things that were recognized in downtown that I thought were big safety issues. One of those was the crosswalk that's now by National Bank. So that's something that I pushed for, particularly in the previous project last year, or the year before rather, which was the Main Street project, getting an actual push button there with flashing lights. So that's something I was interested in. And there were a bunch of other things. So I started talking to Chief Nason at the Bristol Police Department and sort of came up with this rough list of different ideas that we wanted to look at. From there, I realized, just with the nature of the pandemic, my family life, being voted in as a select board member, I just didn't have the time. So knowing that Jessica was interested in that too, I reached out to her and asked if this was something that she'd like to take on, and she did, and did a magnificent job with it. So that's how it started. And then Jessica met with a group of people and started to put together their findings. I think that disbanding is not necessarily disbanding, but it's moved on to a new iteration, which was actually an official committee. And this was one of the members in that group recommended as this is a way to go in terms of having an official town committee that has a little bit more staying power as opposed to just a group of residents. So that's the reason why it's changed. And as for the goals, I think the goals are the same. I think it's something where you can set your own goals and see what you like, but it's just a group that's committed for safety and both for bicycle and for pedestrian safety and other areas of Bristol, other areas that need to be looked at in terms of making Bristol a better town, both in the village area and outside the town. So I think the goals, will change as the committee goes through and as you're looking and finding out new things to do. Mary Ann says, are we to report progress once a month to the board, to the public, to both? I would say we do department roundtable updates at select board meetings every 2 weeks, and that's for departments. But I think he would just probably maybe report every couple of months with information. That's generally, we've asked the Planning Commission to come forward. Kevin Hansen comes up forward as the chair and just sort of explains what the group is doing. And we're going to be doing that for energy and conservation. We hadn't done that in the past, but so it's a fairly new thing. And I think since this is a new group, I think we would ask the same. How is progress measured? I don't have an answer to that yet. I think it's something that the committee would work out. Can we partner with the group tasked with federal relief distribution and or the Bristol Trail Network? Absolutely. The ARPA committee will get going pretty soon. And so by all means, sort of connect with that group and make suggestions. And Porter Knight, you can speak with her at the Bristol Trail Network. And I'm sure people are familiar with that work already. So absolutely, there's no reason not to partner with any of the established organizations in town or established committees for that matter as well. Is locomotion a resource for guidance? Absolutely, and it has been for the previous committee. If we come up with actionable items, are we also tasked with finding the funds? It depends. I think, we've just gone through budget season. The meeting that I was just at 6, we were wrapping up and finalizing for the town report and for the ballot. So we put in, as I said, we put in some funds, not enough for all the projects that were sort of, or the ideas that were put forward by the previous committee. So I think it would be a combination. If it's something, it's tough because the town's always budgeting for the next year ahead. And so you're sort of, we're always 2 years out really in terms of being able to figure out how to use the money and what money to put in. And also too, any project that you're doing, if it's not sort of grant related, it's affecting your final tax percentage. So we're always just sort of very mindful of that. But I think it'll be a combination. I think some things can be budgeted with town budget and other things are probably better for grant opportunities. And it might be something that we would sort of ask the committee to look into, or at least provide information of grants that would be available. Okay, so those are her questions. Okay, yep.
Was there any money put in for this committee for this year?
Not for this committee, but there was money put into the Public Works Department budget for line striping and signage for some of the projects or some of the ideas that were put forth. And that was something that was sort of more, we knew that those were manageable tasks in terms of the upcoming year. But I'd like to see more go in, specific, pots of money go in for other projects. Okay. I think, yeah, that's everything that Marianne said. Let's move on if everyone's okay. Sorry, I'm the one doing all the talking here. If we're good, let's have Jessica sort of introduce herself and give a little bit of information on the previous committee.
Great. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for all of you volunteering. It's really exciting to see the next generation, the group that's going to take this work forward. So as Ian was already talking about, this was a group of residents who had either put forward complaints or petitions who were just concerned about safe roads. We started working for a little bit and we realized that a lot of our requests had already been dealt with by the bike safety group. They did a bike audit of the town. And so we started meeting with them jointly. So what we ended up with was sort of pulling our suggestions about walkability and pedestrian safety with their more focused on biking suggestions. And so we sort of put it all together just because there was so much overlap. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. So as far as I'd like to talk about money and resources that we discovered as we worked on these suggestions, and then a little bit about the other things we can give you to sort of jumpstart your work. So one thing that we realized is that Mike Winslow was working with us, and I've started passing this information to Chris already. I didn't know he was going to volunteer to be the chair of the committee, but I know his wife. So that's why he started getting this information. So he has all of this contact information, but Mike Winslow was helping us with different permissions that we would have to get from VTrans to lower the speed limit. So the town can lower the speed limit on its own, but if we want to lower the speed limit on sort of East, Main, and West, you have to apply to VTrans for permission. And so Mike Winslow was going to help fill out all of that paperwork. And he also has some ideas about other funding sources. So for example, VTrans does this grant process, and I bet they're probably going to give even more money in grants if they get more federal funding. But these grants will cover things like crosswalk expansion, striping of lanes, signage, the flashing beacons, all of those sorts of things. So that's a great source of funding. We also had a smaller source of funding offered, which was through Michelle Gilbert. And Chris, I had already sent you her email as well. She works for Rise Vermont, and they don't have a huge budget, but they're interested in doing either some signs or volunteering or helping with your work. So they wouldn't be a huge budget source, not like VTrans, but they are looking to do some of the projects. So maybe some of the smaller ticket items they might be able to help with. And then the other resource was Jonathan from Local Motion. And again, I forwarded this information to Chris, but he was a great resource. So he's really connected into all of the local towns and communities, as well as the grant opportunities. So he'll be a great help for you. And, once you email him, he'll probably start sending you lots of emails. I still get them all. The other resources, so those are sort of money and people resources, human resources. We also took all of everybody's ideas from both the bike group who had done their work previously and then this new pedestrian group. We took all of those ideas and we put them in a spreadsheet, and then we started ranking them so we could figure out, we didn't want to present the select board with like 20 things and have them stop listening to us on like item 5. And so what we did was we prioritized what we thought was the highest priority or needed to be dealt with first. And that's what we presented to the select board. And I've already shared that PowerPoint with Chris. But we had lots of other things that came up with both the bike group and the walking group. And so I'll share that spreadsheet with you, and it might be a good resource for getting started. Not that you have to, do everything the way that we did it or even agree that those are the priorities, but I did want to share all of those resources with you so that you would have, you wouldn't have to start from zero. You could sort of start from where we left off. And then I didn't know, I've been forwarding things to Chris just because I had his email address, but I didn't know if as a committee you wanted to use like a Google Drive or Dropbox or anything like that, but I could also move our resources into some resource like that. So I'm happy to share that information in any way that would be convenient for you. And I'm also happy at any time, if you want me to join a meeting, or if you want one of the other people that I've mentioned, Mike or Michelle or Jonathan, to join a meeting, they would be happy to do so also. So we want to help you guys. Any questions or anything I'm forgetting?
I think I'll start with the, first of all, thank you. I'll start with one of the last things you mentioned, which was all the material. Ian, my only comment about that in the email back and forth was, since we are now a public above the ground group, are there any rules we have to follow as far as how that material is shared and stored?
Not really. I mean, the main thing in terms of the public meeting is just having the ability for the public to join, and then setting an agenda, posting the agenda at least 48 hours before the meeting, and then having minutes for the meeting a few days after the meeting takes place. That's the main thing. In terms of materials, we use the town website as much as we can. Val does, especially posting select board materials, and I'm happy to do that. So if you have documents that you want to share, you can send them to me and I can post links or post PDFs, things like that. As for like a cloud sharing thing, the town uses Office 365 and sort of a SharePoint thing. I don't know if there's one that's available for our committees and commissions. I know that it's something that the Planning Commission has asked about, and I don't think there was a definitive answer to that. So I'm going to look into that. and
Okay.
just see what's available. It might be something where you're just using Google Docs, and as long as I'm sort of shared with it, at least the select board liaison part, I know sort of the materials that you're working on and things like that, and get access to them if I need to. But yeah, there's nothing I know of at the moment, so I'm going to look into that for you guys.
Okay, cool. In the meantime, I'll put it on, my company has OneDrive, so I'll
Okay.
put all that stuff on there and I'll share it with the group as well as
Yeah.
you. And then
And
we'll,
maybe it's just, since you have a web page for this committee, maybe it's just a link there so the
Yep.
public can look at that.
Yep.
And if it's just a read only sort of access, or you can download the files as opposed to uploading, that seems fairly safe.
Yep.
And so you can direct people to that.
cool.
So Chris, maybe what would be easiest is I can invite you to the Google Drive that we were using, and then you can just migrate all of those materials over into your OneDrive or whatever it is you'll be using.
Perfect.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Perfect. The only other thing, and it was kind of unspoken, but it's a question as much from an historical perspective for Jessica as well as it is for you, Ian. Are we operating under like a specific charter from the select board, or is it up to us to come up with a mission statement for the committee?
I think it'll be up to you. We would look to that for you to sort of present a mission and present that to us and just sort of get approval. Not that you would need approval, but it's always nice to have that. The idea, I think, what did I write in the original? Let's see if I can find that. It was sort of advisory to the select board in terms of looking at, bicycle and pedestrian safety. But I think, I think writing a mission statement would be good. I think each committee has their own mission statement, and it was usually those were just sort of hashed out as the committees first met and went through it. But that would be great. I think that's something. And there's nothing that from the select board side, at least as far as I know, where we want a particular thing. I think we're looking at the group to sort of be as sort of broad and open-minded as possible when it comes to this particular sort of focus.
Great.
The mission statement that Jessica did was pretty nice. It's on their own. One that
Yeah.
she originally wrote. It really says it all.
And we were hoping, I mean, the reason that we asked for a committee to be created was that, we had a lot of energy for a group of residents, but the biking group had come even before us. And so what we saw was that there were all of these like one-off efforts when people got really interested and they would try to present something, but then they would all disperse. And this was a way to have a more concentrated effort so that things would be regularly brought to the select board. People would be paying attention to these issues. There could be requests for funding. So just starting to make, bike and pedestrian safety part of what we do as a town, rather than just, whenever we get like enough people all together to do it. So that's our only hope. We're not thinking that like you'll pick up exactly where we left off and do exactly what we would have done. You'll have your own objectives and things like that. And we're all happy to help as much as we can, but we're just really excited that you guys are willing to pick up the torch.
Yeah, and I think sort of a lot of that stems from just residents being interested in a particular area. And I agree, it's nice to have an official committee sort of working on these things, especially because it allows the select board to sort of call on that committee, during whatever time period and sort of figure out what you folks are working on, as opposed to us starting things. I think there's, because it's a town administrator versus manager, the select board has a lot on their plate. And usually sort of it's not the day-to-day running of the town, but it's not sort of big picture, long range stuff in terms of projects like this. It's just sort of like the nuts and bolts of the town. So it's nice to have a group that's, similar to energy and similar to conservation, that's looking at these particular areas and coming and proposing things to us. And I think we're all very supportive. I think that was sort of shown with Jessica's presentation. There are obviously questions about some of the things that were proposed, but I think overall there was very good support for all of those things, and it's just how we want to implement them. And I know that Jessica previously mentioned the speed change. That was something that I know a number of select board members have been interested in for a number of years, and just sort of figuring out how to do it, mainly because we have a state highway, which isn't really a state highway within our boundaries, sort of running right through the town, and how do we sort of work to reduce speeds. And so, and I know that's something I'm very interested in, and the chief of police is interested in doing that as well.
Shouldn't be that difficult, because like Middlebury has it. They have it on their state highways.
Right.
25.
Right. I think it's work to do it, but you can. And I think we're always hesitant because of usually it's sort of information that other people has sort of I think it's this. I think you have to do this to do this. And it would be nice to get a definitive, and Jessica and that group sort of got that information, especially with Mike Winslow as well. And so now it's sort of, we can continue that and actually move towards these things. I was looking at the budgeting that we had done this year. And we've put in, so a little more is added to the signs. This is for the materials and services in the Public Works Department. I see the note here, new street names, speed limit signs, things like that. So there was 40% added to that. And then quite a bit more added to the pavement markings. So it says due to striping the bike lane and pedestrian lane. So that went up by 550%. This year. So there's a good chunk of money to do that. And obviously if we can find money saving ways to sort of make that money go as far as possible, that would be great too. So we do have money in there. So I think part of that is for this group, since that's money's been put in there, is to work on that and to make sure that happens. And I think take the work that Jessica and the group did and sort of, pull that section out, since we know we have money for that now in the budget, as long as it gets approved and another month, and be able to work on that and make sure that work goes through. I think now it's not something that the Public Works Department has on their radar. It is immediately going to be like, great, the budget was approved, and the money's there to be able to do that. And this is obviously, it's approved, but then you're spending it in July. So I think it's a matter of sort of this group putting that together, that section of it, and making sure that it happens.
Does reducing the speed limit to 25 have to be a town vote?
I don't think so. I think it can be a select board decision.
A select board decision. Mhm.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Oh, that's great.
And for the highway, it can absolutely be changed. We noted a whole bunch of successful examples where towns had done it. The problem is that the way that they used to do it for VTrans was they would do speed studies. It's kind of like the Autobahn, like cars will go as fast as it's safe to go. And so depending on the average speed of cars, that's how you set your speed limit. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but that's sort of the way they've been doing it. But they do have all sorts of exceptions. And so, the idea that on Main Street cars are backing out of parking spaces, like they can't see the cars when they're backing out. And then all the different roads that come out, like Basin Street, which is at such an angle. So if you have those sorts of extenuating circumstances, you can put that in the application and they're much more likely to get approved. And so Mike was saying that he would help with the speed studies, and he would also help write that application with all of those extenuating circumstances.
So you still have to do the speed studies, because I know that was one of the things that we had. Speed studies had been done previously a number of years ago, but listening to Peaker sort of speak about this, it always seemed like there wasn't enough detail done, or they were done in the wrong way to really capture the data that was needed to be able to change the speed limit. So that's still a part of that VTrans's demands.
Well, Mike thought that he could use the old speed data. The problem with that speed data was that the cars are going really fast. So if you use the VTrans formula, we should raise the speed limit.
Yeah.
So according to the VTrans formula, the speed limit through town should be 40 miles per hour. That's how fast people are going when he's taking the measurements at the entry points into town. And people are going really fast. And so the average speed, was like 38.5 miles per hour. So we should be raising the speed limit to 40 if you use the way that VTrans was calculating it. But that said, it's clear that that's not right for like a school zone and a downtown where cars are backing out of spaces and all the things we have. And so Mike felt pretty confident that even if we had to use those speed studies that are going to show excess speed, that we would have all these other extenuating circumstances that we'd be able to to put forward, as well as the town interest. So when the select board puts that application forward and they say, you know, people are really behind this, we have a new committee, those sorts of things, then it seems like from the examples that Mike was seeing that V-Trans is responsive to that.
We also have an advantage too. Bristol is a designated downtown, one of 24 or 25 in the state. It's a state program, and we have been for over 10 years. And I think that's also another sort of piece of ammunition that you can use, is that Bristol is a designated downtown. And so that would help with that argument to reduce our speed. And we
So-
might even be able to get sort of preference because of that. I think I'll dig out the emails I've sent before to Gary Holloway, who's one of the administrators of that program at the state. And I think he cited the same things, doing the speed studies, but I think by being a designated downtown, it gives you a little bit more flexibility and as I said, ammunition sort of at the V-Trans level to be able to make this proposal go through quicker, hopefully.
So, but the rest of the town can be just a select board decision to make it 25 then?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
is that in the works at all now with the select board?
No, it would be something, I think it was the main thing that we looked at, it seemed like that we could accomplish was sort of the striping and switching the signs. Because the speed was, we could definitely set it in the village area other than the state highway. And we could look into that, but I don't know if, and then we have to talk to Bruce about this. I don't know if they were interested in doing everything at once. So it
Yeah, that
didn't
makes
change,
more
you know,
sense.
everything changes at once and you can make
Yeah.
a bigger sort of push for all of that being changed. I
Yeah.
know that they've set up the signs. I think the speed signs that they've put in, and they're working, the one by the fire station, I think it flashes green under 30, but there's something else where it flashes at
Says, "Thank you."
25 or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, something
oh.
like that. So where you're
They've
sort of, you're
changed it.
being more
Mhm.
made aware of it saying 25 versus 30. And so I think we're starting to do that, but there's nothing at the moment in our agenda, mainly because we've been focusing on budget stuff and sort of wrapping that up. But if you're able to put something together, or at least, take the information that Jessica and the team did and sort of propose it again and to say, hey, look, we'd like to have this done by this date, that obviously gives us something to work with. So I think it's up to you to sort of bring it to us and just sort of propose it and say, hey, we feel it would be great to get the village down to 25, within the next couple of months, and then we're working on this, or do everything together. It would be up to you.
Want to add something. If the state says we have to do complete new speed studies, my recommendation is to have that be done while those warnings are out. I'm a firm believer when someone comes into town and they see that it's flashing their speed up there, they slow down. If it's not there, then they just keep blowing through. And the messages are there. So if we are required to redo those, it may even benefit us, where they'll see the new speeds where people are responding to that, decreasing the speed entering town.
Right, especially if that's the formula where they're just like, what's the average speed? Oh, everyone's going 50. So if everyone is slowing down, then yeah, that might actually help our case now because we have those.
Mhm.
I think they
I
work.
remember vividly when Starksboro, before the speed limit changed, it used to be after you crest the hill going down into Starksboro Village, that's where the first deceleration was. And that was roughly 10 to 12 years ago.
Huh.
And the state put the new reduction in speed south of that as you go up the hill. So again, I'm a firm believer that people will do the right thing when they know. So when someone is aware that going up the hill into Starksboro, it's not after they crest the hill and then they've got to hit the brakes hard, jam the brakes, all of that. People make that smooth transition. So I would almost propose, if we have to redo the study, move that signage even further, maybe towards the Lord's Prayer Rock, maybe even further down just past the fire station as you crest the hill, come around the corner before the high school, before the road to Airport Drive. I know that's very controversial. It was about 15 years ago when there was a town proposal to change the entrance to the high school, and there were three. I was actively involved in that, and that was a hot topic where people just didn't want to spend the money, and then they were worried about the drastic change. So what's my point? Go back to my point, is if we have to get that data again, I think we should be mindful of where we put those signs. Like on North Street, if it's before the speed limit change, people will decrease speed when they see that speed flashing up.
Yeah, and we can do, I mean, there are fixed ones now. There are 3 fixed ones. But we also, the police department has their portable units that they put out, and we can use that. The trouble addressing the airport drive, I know the study, I have a copy of that, which was there are 3 proposals in terms of changing the actual airport drive and how it curves around, or doing a roundabout there, or rotary. Yeah, and I think a lot of it was the expense attached to that. They were pretty big price tickets. The only issue I see in terms of with the speed radar putting it down further is that it's at the top of the hill that's when it changes from town highway, from state highway. The sign's right there. So I don't know. We'd have to talk to Bruce. You'd have to talk to Bruce about that and see, like, are you willing to put it down further? Because I do think it's a combination of things. Like, you need one right at the start, but then you also have that long drag on all 3 entrances, north, south, and east, or north, east, and west rather, where you have these long drives getting into the main downtown area. And so usually people are speeding up, but I don't know. And that might be something that this committee can look at in terms of, okay, we've got that nice new one by the fire station, but once people see that, they're down to 30, are they speeding up by the time they get past the creamy stand and they're heading, down past Howden Hall? Are they already speeding up again? And the same with north, and the same with east as well. You still have that long drag, and Jessica knows that. I mean, her house is right there where that speed sign is. I'm sure people are speeding up by the time they get to Mountain Street.
And we'll certainly ask Chief this, but do you know if those signs, the ones that are, for lack of a better term, permanent right now, do those record data?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we would have some of this information.
Yeah, that can record data. I think there are other models that you can get that are less expensive, but still flash, that don't record data. So if you wanted to place them further down, and I don't want to necessarily inundate the town with a lot of sort of signage and those kind of things, but I think in key areas, they would probably help a lot. And Bruce will have his recommendations too, in just terms of what he sees. But yeah, all of those record data, I believe, and his portable one does as well, which he puts out in various places. And it's, it would be interesting, even though the select board has sort of purview to be able to change the speed in the village area, apart from the state highway area, it might be interesting to look at and get Bruce's data, because he's put up the speed radar in various streets in the village area, just to see what the averages are. I know that myself, I'm supportive of lowering it to 25 because I live in the village, and I think Joel is too. He's spoken at length about wanting to change it and just saying, hey, I want to get this done immediately. I know other select board members have been more hesitant about that. So we want to make sure that it is something. I don't know if you're living in the village, I don't know why you would want to keep it or not want to lower it, but it's something to be mindful of, that not everyone might want to have that changed. So, obviously I'm sure you'll be considering that, but just I wanted to put that out there.
Where, as far as areas, I know we're looking at the village, but as far as the areas where we're looking at proposing changes for, where does it end? Like, what would it include from, like, where 17 goes by the Lord's Prayer Rock out to the bridges, like that whole section through Rockydale?
Yep.
Are we looking at that as well? Because that's definitely an area, as far as, to be a pedestrian is quite terrifying.
Yes. So that's obviously state, we're obviously, it's a state highway coming in just at the Lord's Prayer Rock. So it's working with VTrans again on that. But I think this committee can look at all of Bristol. It's not just, there's obviously, it's a lot of the proposals were very village centric, just in terms of that's where a lot of the walking and biking is happening. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you don't want to limit yourself. I want you to look at sort of everywhere in the town to see what can be improved, because I think not a lot of people are doing that. I think a lot of stuff is very village focused, but there's a lot of bicycle activity on all the roads surrounding Bristol and coming into Bristol.
Mountain Road.
Right.
I know that section through Rockydale is particularly an area where I often, when I'm running, it's tough because like where the guardrail is on the riverside, you know, in the summertime, it's never really mowed well. So you have all these weeds and stuff growing out that are just pushing you further into the road, and it's a very narrow shoulder to begin with. And then in the wintertime, you've got snow and ice that has, you know, can't push all the way off the shoulder because of the guardrail. So it kind of narrows it even. It's a narrow, there's nowhere for you to go. Like if I've had to jump over the rail before. It just doesn't, it's a tricky spot you don't really want to be a pedestrian on or a bike or be cycling on
There's no,
particularly. But if you're gonna do a loop that's gonna go far and go through Lincoln and back, like you have to come back through that section somehow.
Right. There was a scoping study done many years ago in terms of the viability of putting in a sidewalk or some sort of pedestrian path along that all the way down through to Bartlett Falls.
Right.
The cost was the main issue. It was, you know, over $1 million to put something like that in. When we set up the shared drive, I can share those documents. I'll send them to Chris and you can put them up. I'll send you the Airport Drive one from probably a decade ago now, that study, and I can send the Rockydale one. You can just sort of an idea of what or do something across there to be able to get to Bartlett Falls. And I know you're starting to run into, as you get closer to Bartlett's, you're running into people's private property. But you know, the Bristol Trail Network, their Port has worked, you know, diligently for the last few years in terms of connecting with landowners to be able to have trails run. And so that seems like a natural progression to get something down there to Bartlett's. You know, that's going to make Bristol even more attractive than it already is. So yeah, I can share all that, and then you can have that information to sort of, you know, look at and see how ridiculously expensive it was to put a real sidewalk all the way down there.
Right. I'm sure it's, well, I'd also just wonder, just given it's, you know, isn't it state highway for,
Correct.
where does it become the towns along?
It's right at the Lord's Prayer Rock. You'll see a sign as you drive in. So it's that's where, and it, you know, Peker always likes to say, he talks about, you know, it's all state highway until they don't want to pay for any of it, and then it becomes the town's issue
Yeah.
to deal with, you know, in
They
that
want to
section.
deal with
And
the
if you try to exactly, if you try to do something, even though there's a sign right there that says end of state highway, it's still their state highway. So yeah. Okay. Anything else, Jessica? I think you've covered everything that sort of your group put forward, and yeah, we'll share materials and get that to everyone here.
And I'm available, you know, if you want me to come back to a meeting or have any questions or anything, I'm happy to help with your work. Thank you all for volunteering.
And thank you
for all your
for
previous work.
all the work you've done already, and the bicycle group as well. Like there's a lot of really good work that you all did. That I hope we can, you know, keep it moving forward and get some things done.
Let's see. So here, I'm going to share. Let's see if I can do this here. Here we go. Okay. So this is part of the PDF presentation that Jessica and her group shared at the select board. And so some of this has been added to the budget. The advisory bike lanes, the speed table raised crosswalks was something that we didn't add because of, I think we just needed more information about that. There was a concern from the road foreman in terms of plowing in wintertime. And I know that other towns have done it. I know that Jessica's group did research on that, but it's something that I feel like the group needed more information, myself included, just to see if it really would work. Because also there's, depending on how you do it, there was considerable cost to that. And so figuring out how to actually pay for that. But I think it's still something that needs to be sort of investigated and followed up on. The rapid flashing beacons, we've got that new speed sign at the fire station. That crosswalk right there, which was put in and isn't completed yet because we're actually waiting on the rapid flashing beacons for that area. So there's going to be one there. which is nice. And I know that there were other locations in town that were put forth. I think we should follow up on that. Obviously, we talked about lowering the speed limit, 25 throughout town. And then obviously creating the committee. And I think, yeah, so this was sort of what was proposed. And I sort of mocked up these images for the group previously, just sort of showing you what is possible. And I think the select board members all like this and wanted to see this implemented. And so it's a matter of sort of like getting an action plan for this and getting the right information on what can be done. I think, the money's going to be there in another few months, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to actually implement this. There's another mock up there on North Street.
Great
It's
idea.
nice.
The pedestrian bike lane down Pine. I thought
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Came up with that to calm the traffic. Now, would it make Pine Street actually sort of a single lane road with two-way traffic? So it'd narrow it to calm the traffic and give an actual place for the pedestrians and cyclists to be? Is that what it'll be?
That was the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what would happen is that cars would be driving in the center lane. If there were two cars coming at each other, they would be able to go into the other lane, but they would have to defer to bikes and pedestrians. And there would be signage explaining that.
I love it. That's a great
And
idea.
probably the dashes is better because then cars realize they can go over it if they have to. A solid line, they might really hesitate, really start complaining. And then having the signs that says pedestrian bicycle is really important because it clarifies what that lanes are for.
Yeah, a lot of it was sort of figuring out in terms of and working with, I guess it was Mike Winslow, right? In terms of the width of this. I mean, Pine Street's not super wide, so it's figuring out where those stripes can be. This was sort of an approximation of where we thought it would work in terms of measuring the road. Just sort of in when I was mocking these up. So part of it would be sort of figuring out the details of like, okay, where do they actually go? What's our spacing that we need? Can we get sprayed, signs and markings on the road? How much signage do we need? How often do you want to see signs there? Lincoln has this on one of their roads, and it makes it a sort of single lane, but you don't feel that you're restricted when you see another car coming. I mean, Pine Street already kind of deals with this now. I mean, when this picture was taken, there's a couple people walking right there. So, they're already dealing with this. You obviously have the town garage at the end of Pine Street. So there is more heavier traffic coming from there. So you need to be aware of that. But I don't think that shouldn't affect how this is implemented.
And we had both Jonathan and Mike, they've done these measurements and they know what the technical requirements are. So you should feel free to lean on them, just like I did, to tell you what all that stuff is. You don't have to know that on your own.
Who was that, Jessica?
That was Mike Winslow
Michael,
and Jonathan from
yeah.
Local Motion.
Yeah.
They've taken these measurements and they know all of what the width needs to be and those sorts of things. So they'll help you with all of that. You don't have to know it.
Yeah, and part of it too is coming when we implement this, or when this is implemented, is just having all that detail. I think there's, from attending select board meetings for a number of years now, there's a lot of, well, I think it's this. I'm not sure about that. I heard this town did this. We want those definite things. That's what I like as a select person, to be able to have a group come to me and say, okay, here's what the actual rules are. This is what it needs to be. I don't want to hear from 3 or 4 different people in different departments. Well, it could be this. Oh, I heard it was this. When I did it, it was this. When so-and-so was here, it was that. I want definites that I can vote on and approve and be happy with and see implemented. Let's see here.
I was just about to add, and I'll put it in the chat or send it to Chris. I think this is a great opportunity to increase education, and the education needs to occur at the elementary level, the preschool level, townwide, obviously high school, because it's change and it's going to benefit everybody. So if a kindergartner or preschooler can learn it at that age, it's only going to benefit them as they grow and get older. So.
Right.
Kevin,
And if
Kevin,
it's there, if you're able to implement it and it's there and they can learn about a particular thing that's going to help them, as opposed to, this wider road, that's just designed for cars and that's it, yeah, the education is a huge part of it.
yeah, I agree. I'm making a list of names of people that we'll have to basically serve as liaisons with, obviously Chief Nason, but just going down the list, it's police, highway department, select board, rec club, rec department, because they're two different things. But right in the middle of it is schools, and thinking of the schools in terms of, both the individual levels as far as Mount Abe and BES, because that's probably, to your points about starting at the elementary level, it's probably best that we maybe look at the schools both from a district level, but also on an individual level. If we can find a stakeholder or somebody to liaise with at Bristol Elementary so that we can start to port learnings and things like that over, I think that might be the way to go.
And
I
the
think that
person
could be
who's,
easy. Sorry, Jessica. Isn't her name Jenny, the PE teacher, and she's a very active bicyclist?
I think Kathy, right?
Kathy Turner. Kathy
Yes.
Turner.
Kathy. Okay, thank you.
She was on the bike committee, so she helped give feedback on this version, and she would be happy to work with us, with you, now that you're taking over.
Awesome.
I think the education definitely needs to be district-wide because Bristol is the hub. People come into town for everything that happens on the green. People are at the rec field for Little League, for softball, for soccer. It needs to be every school in the district.
So these, looking at the sort of speed tables, as I said, I think the select board need a little bit more information just to see, a clear sort of idea, are you proposing something, or would you propose something that is a temporary thing that we could try? And what's the cost associated with that? Or do we want to move to something more permanent if it does work? Part of two, in terms of the signage and the crosswalks and bollards, we have a good amount of bollards that are put out, I think, at every single crosswalk. I know that the Public Works Department purchased more this year and had them out. I think too, I'm a designer, that's my real job. I'm always sort of looking at big picture in terms of how everything affects everything else. And so, it's nice to have these signs, especially the rapid flashing beacons, but we don't want to inundate the town with them. They sort of, the information I've heard from people is that you can have them, but they sort of lose their effectiveness if they're on every crosswalk. And they don't necessarily need to be on every crosswalk, but I do think there are key areas that we need to look at. For me, it was the one by National Bank and across from Vermont Tree Goods. That was an area where I literally been run over many times, especially when it's 4 o'clock and it's pitch black outside and you want to cross the street and the street lights aren't lighting it enough. That's a place where you definitely needed one of these things. But looking at other areas too, we need to, you need to look at where else we need them. I think there was a proposal for one of these at the North and Pleasant Street. And I don't know if that's still the case. It's a wide area. You have good field of view vision, in all 4 directions there. But it's something that obviously this committee could look at and see, or if it's not there, at another place, where are sort of troublesome areas where people are crossing. That one's also a high traffic area in terms of elementary school and crossing to, or high school. Yeah. So, it's something that in terms of how much it's used, how much lighting is there, and also how it's going to fit into the overall design of the signage in town, looking at every street, things like that.
Isn't that where the grammar school uses the crosswalk mainly? They used to have a crossing guard there in Pleasant.
Right. Not anymore. I haven't seen a crossing guard there in quite a while.
The kids still cross there. There's not even a bollard there.
Right.
For the kids. That should be one of our top priorities, safety for the kids going to school.
Yeah,
there is a bollard there during the summertime. They get taken out for the winter just because of plowing. But there is one there. And I know that it may have disappeared. Either maybe someone hit it or maybe it got moved to somewhere else, but there usually is one there at that crosswalk.
It's a bad sign if somebody hit it, right? Yeah. At least it wasn't a kid.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just, a large truck ran over or something. Yeah. speed reduction, and then yeah, the education side. Okay, I'll stop sharing this. Questions from the group. Is there anything I haven't covered? Any questions you have of me or of Jessica?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, other business. Any other business that folks want to discuss?
I think it'd be nice to start getting the ball rolling for raising some money or grants, because it's nice to be able to have some money to work with instead of asking the town all the time.
Yeah.
That takes time to do it. And Jessica's got all these different people in contact and stuff that we can start that ball rolling. Because it does take time, even though we see what we have to do and what we need to do, but it'd be nice to get the money going a little more to do that. The town would be a little more accepting when we don't have to ask for more money.
Yeah, it's always difficult because we're when you're asking for money now, that money is already accounted for until the 1st of July, and so it's a little bit more difficult to do that. And so you're a year away from perhaps doing something. There was a grant. The town clerk forwarded me information for the AARP, and they usually do a grant, a community challenge grant each year, and that's obviously a much larger organization. And so, but I can send you details. I'll send Chris details on that. The
I just
deadline
sent it
is
to Chris.
okay. Great. Then that's something, and I know, and we've applied for that before for other things and haven't gotten it. It's a very, very well used opportunity, or grant. A lot of people submit, but I think if you have the right thing, that's going to sort of pique their interest. Then sort of anything's possible. Okay. Usually in these meetings to do a public forum, and you can choose to do, I did it at the end here. You could do it at the beginning if you wish. Select board generally does it at the beginning just because meetings are quite long. Other committees do it at the end. But we usually just ask for a public forum. And I'll find out the one in terms of the running these meetings. The official law is that you need to have a public place where the public can come. And that's why the select board is having meetings in Holly Hall now. But given the pandemic, I know that there's legislation where you may not have to have a public space, because if you have a publicly available Zoom link or something like that, then that is a potential. So I'll look at that and I'll see. I know that other committees, I know that the Energy Committee has been meeting just via Zoom and posting the links publicly. And so I'll double check on that. I don't attend select board meetings in person just because of my concern for health and safety, and I have young kids. But I know that there are legal things, obviously, with public meetings for municipalities. So I'll look into that and just confirm and see if it's, we can do it on Zoom. Let's see. Kevin posted, we do propose a possible event safety day or intro. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. A couple things in the chat.
We should do a rodeo for kids' safety, bike safety. That hasn't happened for a while.
And then Tanya said, has anyone complained about the intersection of Burpee and Plank for safety? Not that I know of, but I don't know if anybody on this group is aware of that. I know, but not anybody on this group.
We made a list of problem areas, and I believe, I can't remember, it was somebody from the Bikes Committee that pointed out that road. And I think they were thinking about using part of that road for that triangle bike loop thing, right from Middlebury to Vergennes to Bristol. And so our thought was that it might be addressed through creating those bike lanes. But I just sent Chris the document so you guys can take a look at that more.
Has anyone ever proposed a stop sign there for the other direction?
I don't know. I could ask select board members.
It's interesting when we think about, say, Plank Road and how, one of the things we haven't talked about, and we can certainly put on the agenda for the next meeting, is right now we're very concerned with the safety aspects of the village and the town, and cycling and the pedestrian aspects. The recreational opportunity, I think it was apologies, I can't remember which one of you, it was one of the things that you discussed, but about like making Bristol a cycling hub for people, like a destination. Yeah, Jerry, like, to me, the opportunity there, and that intersection of Burpee and Plank is interesting, because so many people are using Plank to go out and do gravel rides and head out and just do loops that way. And it's a pretty hair-raising situation, especially if you're clipped in. That is a very gnarly thing, but I do think that there's this whole other thing that we can start talking about too, which is the destination aspect, the recreational aspect of this whole thing.
Okay, any other questions from folks?
The Zoom link that we have, is that the same link we use every meeting?
Yes. So for the Zoom, I'll figure out, I think I'll probably give, we can let Chris have the town Zoom account details. I think the chairs of each of the committees have them. And then I've set up that link, and I've set it up monthly on this Thursday, the fourth Thursday at 7 p.m. There are no other meetings that conflict apart from the one that was on, just happened to be on tonight. And I actually proposed that at Monday's meeting, so that was sort of my fault. But I've set it up so if I give Chris the information, he'll be able to log in just with using the town Zoom account. It'll automatically record the meeting for you, and then you can use that same link every time you send out the agenda, which is kind of nice. And I can send all that to you. And so, yeah, you should be able to just log into the account, and then and start the meeting. I think it actually starts automatically, and you can it'll just join at 7, but I can talk to you offline about that, Chris, and get you set up with that.
Perfect.
I think you can set up, Janet, my wife used this. You can set it up so that automatically every month. Just make it a
Right.
link.
Yeah, it'll do that. So it's there, and then it's a matter of just sort of starting the meeting, and then everyone will just join automatically. And usually you'll just see like the waiting room or the waiting for the meeting to start.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll automatically record just to the cloud, and then what I'll do is I can pass that on to Neat, and they can put it on their schedule, and I can talk to them too and see if Sean wants to just jump in at the beginning of the meeting, and he can just usually record, and they can broadcast it live as well. And that's another, and I'm thinking like, if Neat can do that and broadcast it live, that's a way where it's a more, even though we don't have a public space for people to come, because we have the Neat television, that might be okay to be able to use that. I'm not too worried about that. It would only be if someone decides to, has an issue with that as a member of the public, but hopefully that's not going to happen given the circumstances, in our community and the surrounding towns and the world. So we'll see.
Awesome.
All righty.
So
if there's nothing
Chris,
else,
Chris, once you get all the information from Jessica, all the contact information, name, you'll get it all out to us then after we give Ian.
I've got a share set up. I'm going to start porting all of Jessica's stuff over into that tonight. I'll send out a note about that probably by tomorrow of where that location is so that everybody can start jumping in there. And then, we'll have everybody's contact info, but we might as well start working on the agenda for the next meeting as soon as possible, because I'm sure we're all anxious to get rolling on various aspects of this. And then I think, Jerry, were you going to be the one that communicated to Mary Ann that she's the secretary?
I
Sure.
can do that. I
Okay,
can speak to
okay.
it if you want.
Yeah, that'll be better for friends.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it was
That'll
a select.
They'll teach you not to show up.
It was a select. It was a select board appointment. It can have the stamp of the town on it.
I can ask her about that. Okay, terrific. Yeah, and what I can do is that share link I can post on the town website. And so if people forget where that is, you can just go to the town website. And it's actually because it's bicycle, you're right at the top in terms of our committee list on the left-hand side there. And so the details, and I'll put the update the terms and have those just in there. And then I think I'll probably, if Chris, you're okay, I'll put your email down just as chair now. And so if people want to reach out to you, they can.
Perfect.
All right. Any other questions from anybody?
No.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for attending. Oh, and everyone's fine with the fourth Thursday of a month. It seemed like everyone was able to make that. So I'll keep that in as a Zoom thing. And then wish you luck. And so, yeah, I'm the liaison on the select board side. I'm up for re-election this year. But hopefully I'll be voted in. And so I'll continue to be the liaison for this group. And I'll be chair of the select board this year.
Nice.
after March. So I'm running the show. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything that select board is doing or ways that you should present things. I'm happy to chat with anyone at any time.
Awesome.
Great.
Jessica, thanks. And Ian, thanks for
Oh, yeah.
hosting.
Sure.
Thanks
All right.
for-
I'll
Thanks,
Thank
see
everybody.
you
you
folks
all.
later. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.